if we're going to make change, and if we really do want to go to that base principle of love one another, then we have to listen.
When I started working in the music industry, I started touring with artists. So that was basically, I was like one female in a van full of guys. It took a bit to make sure that, I had the confidence and felt good about what we were doing and knew what I was doing enough to actually succeed at it. I didn't really have any other females to like look up to that I could learn from, and because everybody above me was a male. There's stereotypes about like, women are gonna get pregnant and have babies, and what happens to your career then? I mean, I want women to feel comfortable going to other women and asking for help. I hope that, there's more people that aren't scared to ask and that come and want to learn more and aren't as like afraid.
When I first started off, the idea that it was predominantly men, there's a number of board meetings in my early career that I was in where literally there was 39 men and myself, and it actually didn't even dawn on me. I don't think we actually ever really quite realized how bad it was, because that was what it was, and it was so normalized. So I'm really excited to see that sort of change and that awareness, both for women and men sort of come about.
I went from a very female-dominated space to a record label that is mostly run by men, and we have a lot of male artists on our label who are all wonderful, but I've seen more women have to fight harder for those roles at labels, and even in press, there's not as many women being featured, and it's just, sometimes it's a little bit of a boys' club. Women sort of aren't taken as seriously, especially if they're doing their own sounds and having to deal with audio engineers at shows that are just treating them like they know nothing.
I got the sense from people who were working in sound and in engineering, the stuff behind the scenes, that a lot of the internalized misogyny in the music industry is still very, very prevalent there. They just like deal with all sorts of crappy comments, or their fellow male sound techs just assuming they don't know how to use their gear. And some of these are women who have been doing this for like a decade and beyond. Especially anything to do with equipment or gear or production, women are still feeling challenged, and the expectations are difficult.
I've seen the industry change over time. There's solidarity, there's a lot of conversation around being other, around being woman, around being Black or a person of color or Indigenous. There's still a lot of change that needs to happen, but there's definitely conversation, and there's definitely a sort of sense of confidence in being able to talk about being a Black woman. That hasn't always been there, even though there's still a lot of change that still needs to happen.
When people talk about like how there isn't a lot of women like in the industry, it just kind of like surprises me, because there is a lot of people out there, and we're all making stuff and we're making shit happen. It'd be really awesome if larger music companies were more inclusive with like hiring female directors to make music videos, providing more opportunities to people that don't necessarily have a big representation right now, because there's a lot of people that are out there, but maybe they haven't been given the opportunity yet.
It's so nice to see representation at the Grammys or at the Junos, or just bills for festivals. Think about those things when you're making festivals. Women have such a necessary perspective, and it's not even just women. There's so many marginalized groups that they just have this perspective that I think has been ignored for so long. I'd love to see more of those stories being told.
I would like to see more diversity, obviously, between the genres of music, but also who is performing those genres of music as well. There's a huge sort of like queer, youth, LGBTQ community in the punk scene, for example. Normally we would think punk music, it still has that association that is very white and male, but it's actually not, from what I have experienced and see on the ground.
I know a lot of people say, this is a man's issue. Men have these jobs, and why aren't there more women? Well, I think from a long time ago, we knew that there were very few jobs for women, so we were grown up to fight for that specific job, and we fought against each other. We've been taught to kind of put our claws out and fight against each other because there have been so few jobs for us. Instead, I think we're at that point right now where we need to start helping each other and realizing that we're not always in competition.
I think definitely nowadays there's a lot of opportunity for female artists. Actually, last night I played a show with amazing 3 female artists. I feel like this year I've been playing a lot of shows with women, and I'm noticing like the change, like the whole bill is like women, and they're like super talented. Growing your own community is really important, and like supporting each other. You can like give each other like a more opportunity to help each other out.
As a fan and as a critic who went to rock and roll shows and like would write about them, I definitely have seen a change in terms of women-identified musicians, you know, coming to prominence. I feel like there's more bands right now led by women than there's ever been before.
I would love to see a little bit more thought and consideration go into putting people in different positions, because it's like, all right, we've checked off this box, we have this position filled, they look like how we want things to look in the future, so we're satisfied, and not actually being conscious of the power reshuffling that has to happen. So when people are in positions of power, they can actually just make decisions that are going to positively affect the people around them and affect the future. I think, you know, it's easy to stack your festival lineup with a bunch of women and then pat yourselves on the back, but what are the conditions for female artists that are entering massive labels and don't understand at what points they can push back, and their support system around being able to advocate for their well-being?
I always come from a place of gender equality, but this is like a global thing for me. This is simply not about just female representation or female, you know, people who the trans community, the LGBTQ community, like everyone. This is also people of different cultures. This is also different socioeconomic backgrounds or genres. I really want to see the industry be more representative of society.
It's a hard topic. It's hard to get someone to hear you when that's not their experience. It feels like you're flogging a dead horse, but the horse is not dead. The horse is alive. And when things get threatened, that's when, you know, like, I don't want to listen. And it's still a white boys club, you know, until we start switching that up, and not in a way where anyone feels threatened. It's not about being threatened. It's not about revenge. It's about equality. It's not about tearing someone down so that we can be on top as women. It's about surviving. It's about being in this world and actually feeling like you belong and that you're safe.
You can feel like as soon as you enter a new environment that there is this pressure to have the right answers, to have the perfect response. When we're talking about things that are complicated and vague and constantly moving and they're flexible and they have a lot of different working parts, it's okay to ask questions, that it's okay to be wrong and acknowledge that, and then still feel like you're empowered to make a correct decision later on down the line. Don't necessarily have to feel isolated, even though the industry can do a pretty good job of making people feel isolated sometimes. But it's a lot more full and welcoming than I think people typically realize.